any advertiser, any publisher who is associated with that platform, with launching a product on that platform, had a lot of visibility, in their portfolio, in the CBS portfolio, and also a lot of brands. If you look at their mobile strategy, a lot of times they're the ones who are choosing to develop an application for iOS first, more so than Android. I think that in general, as we all know, the Android platform is much more fragmented and a little bit more complex, and especially when it comes to video, for example, where we're still trying to develop and work with various partners to develop a simplified, which is kind of an oxymoron to mobile in general, but a simplified, unified way of delivering video across multiple platforms.
I think the first thing you need to do is figure out every platform. Depending on what you want to go for. So if you want your app or your game to be kind of broadly, if you want to get it out in front of 10 million people, Android's going to be your better bet. If you want to have you want to make more money on each particular one, iPad is the way to go. So every platform is going to have its strengths and weaknesses. I think what's important for developers is you figure that out in advance and code accordingly. So if you want to go after mass market, you want to have ad support, you need to figure that out early and start targeting Android. If you're going to go after big money in each user, you need to figure out your propulsion loops and start figuring that stuff out early, and figuring out what your value add is very early, and you target more of the iPad. So it really depends on what you're targeting.
We have Deepika here, and I'll let Deepika introduce herself.
So I don't know what you were answering to, but I'm so sorry, I'm so late. I was on the pay page, and you can imagine what happens there. So just a little bit about myself. I run the mobile business for Capcom. Capcom has been in business for over 30 years. It's a traditional video gaming company, and now moving into mobile, trying to tap into markets that are emerging platforms. And normally I don't sound like this is because of Casual Connect. So that's a little bit about what I'm doing there. And I've been in mobile for almost since the launch of iOS. And it's been such an amazing experience. I look at mobile as something I wake up for every morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Deepika. So the question that Malene and Scott were talking to earlier is choice of platform, iOS and Android, and what are some of the trends that they will see. So from Capcom's perspective, do you monetize differently on those two platforms?
Well, we don't have any Android titles, and there's a reason for that. Because it's been very hard to understand how to monetize on that platform. It's kind of fragmented. Initially it started with how many OSs are you going to support, what kind of device type, and how many live teams, and what does it mean for your production cost. So a lot of depends on the cost structure of the company. Coming from a video game background, your cost structure is a little different from a nimble, small, agile, mobile team. And so it never looked like a lucrative platform to begin with. So we've got most of our titles as of right now on iOS. And iOS always is a closed ecosystem. It's easy to identify where the revenue coming from, who are these users. So we have been focused on that for now, but I won't say that things won't change in the future. There are now new technologies like Ouya and other stuff that are coming, which are exciting because it makes arcade action game relevant to Android user now. So as of now, we're just exploring, but no games on Android in the US.
So that's actually an interesting segue into cross-platform development. You just mentioned that cost structure is prohibitive from targeting both platforms. So what are some of the trends that you're all seeing in cross-platform game development, and to what extent does that being adopted in platform?
Go ahead. So in terms of cross-platform, this is exciting for specifically from a user-based perspective that is not only based on mobile, but also looking at the next generation consoles and connected consoles. It's a very exciting time. I mean, in terms of, I was reading this white paper from some of the experts in mobile, and they said something which really stayed with me. And it was like, AAA is like Hollywood. Like, you send out a title, it becomes a hit or it's a miss. But mobile gaming is like television. It's a constant engagement. Like you can always have that relationship building with your user, have continued conversation, keep them in the, in your ecosystem. And that is how I feel that the future of connected services is going to be. We are very excited about it. I can't say what we are working on, but what I can say is that, that's definitely coming.
I'll give a shameless plug. So we at PlayFirst have been cross-platform since the day we launched. Our idea was, we specifically work in games, and the idea is, if I have an iPhone and you have an Android, it shouldn't matter. For friends, it shouldn't matter what phone I have, what phone you have. So our platform supports all our features work, iOS to Android to HTML5. So the developer wants to support a platform. Our technology will help them play games between those two, or trade messages, or compare high scores, or whatever. And honestly, that's the way we feel games should be on mobile. Not everybody knows what the next person has, and it shouldn't matter. If the developer wants to support a platform, they should be able to support their entire user base and not silo those users independently.
The other question I had is that Capcom and to an extent CBS also, you already have brand recognition. People know you Capcom from the arcade game days and CBS TV, I guess. And so how do you actually shepherd that user base to mobile? I mean, what has been your experience in setting expectations? At least in the arcade game situation, people were used with pay-to-play versus the transition to mobile is essentially a free-to-play and IAP type of a business model. So how do you manage those expectations?
I think we're still managing those expectations. We aren't over the hump yet. But, I think that a brand takes about 30 years to build, and that has a leverage in the marketplace. It is definitely a different space when you have an indie developer with no known name of the game launching a game versus something that people have grown up with. They are loyalists to that name. There is some advantage to that. I would be definitely happy to accept that there is that user base available to us at the time of the launch without us actually having to chase them. Though, given that, we also have a challenge. This user base is very opinionated. They are very passionate about what we deliver, and they are very vocal about it. So we have to be always managing that relationship, and it's a constant challenge of what we can deliver and how can we keep that relationship ongoing. And even though they are happy to accept what we launch, there's always an expectation management and a community management that's always a work in progress.
I think from a content perspective, and also because we are primarily a television network, and so, first and foremost, our goal is to drive as much viewership of our network television programming as much as possible. It's one of the reasons why we're the only network that did not join the Hulu ecosystem, and that CBS content can only be consumed where CBS chooses to deliver our content, which is, we just recently launched the CBS full episode video application on iOS, and Android is coming soon, as well as other platforms. But for us, it's more about understanding where our users are coming from, and we have already seen that organically, about between 20 to 30% of our traffic is mobile across all of our brands in aggregation across the 12 brands under the CBS Interactive portfolio. So, we have about 6 or 7 brands that are web only that don't have a television presence, and then the CBS Sports, CBS News, and CBS Entertainment brands obviously have the broadcast component. So, we see still the primary viewership or primary audience is still the TV audience for the CBS brands, and then for the web brands, we do see more of a consumer shift to mobile. And shift is kind of a word that scares a lot of people because they think that there is cannibalization, but we've seen that our mobile traffic has been additive to our overall audience. And so when we identified that the additive audience that's coming to the mobile site, and a lot of it is through referral and search traffic and things like that, we challenge our product teams to understand how the audience gets to our content, and then develop an app strategy that makes sense, that is going to service that user and the type of content that they are searching for while they're on their mobile device. So we have to think about, our task is to think about, do we have the same content available, broadcast on the web, or on desktop, on tablet, and then on mobile devices. And philosophically, there needs to be a native experience or a native value for each platform that makes it relevant or native to that device in order for us to develop to that platform. That kind of makes sense.
So the other question I had was about attribution. So how do you actually attribute the increase in viewership to your larger screens just because of any efforts that you've made in mobile? So is that, you said that it's incremental to your viewer base at net. So how does the attribution work? What are some ways by which you can attribute efforts in mobile to the larger screen?
We are still primarily, I will say that we are still primarily a very desktop heavy culture. And that is one of the reasons I'm employed. Is because I am an advocate for change, and I'm an advocate for identifying what the trends are in the marketplace, seeing that the audience is going mobile, but it's still not, we're not Pandora. Our user base, our mobile user base is not larger than our desktop base. So we obviously have to protect that, that core part of the business. But the other core part of the business is mobile, because we have to be ready for that shift. Right now, consumer shift to that platform is much quicker than marketing shift or advertising dollars or revenue. And so you still need to protect the cash cow, what brings in the revenue, but you also can't be behind in where the future is going.
Thank you. So coming to business models and monetization, there's a lot that's made out of in-app purchases, and that's been touted as the business model for our age. So, but it's also true that to have a successful monetization using in-app purchases, you need to have a steady stream of content that you need to keep upselling. So, to your mind, is there a certain scale at which in-app purchases a business model makes sense? Does the indie game developer, can they actually, at what scale can they say that, yeah, we're going to go with an in-app purchase, or we'll just have an ad-supported business model, just because they don't have enough content?
I would say that in-app purchase shouldn't be, you really shouldn't look at it as for something that you need scale to support. It's really more about the design of the game. If you look at, the example I always use is there's 100 million Connect 3 games on iOS or on Android. What Candy Crush did very well, and the reason that it's making $1 million a second, is that it does a very good job of keeping people inside the game. They use compulsion loops to keep people play one level, you beat it very easily. You beat 2 levels, you beat it very easy. 3rd level gives you a little bit of difficulty, but you win it. By the time you get to the 10th level, you basically spend 15 minutes in the game, and you just barely lose that level. And at that point, they introduce, hey, here's a power up you get for 99 cents. By that point, they've already got you basically in the game for 15, 20 minutes. It's almost become a habit because you played 10 levels, you learn how the mechanics work, and now you're hit with a paywall. But it's not a paywall, meaning you can't go forward without paying. It's a, you almost beat it for 99 cents for under $1. You couldn't beat this level and move on to the next one. They're very, very good at designing their game around those compulsion loops. The idea of forming a habit and then basically putting a $1 in front of that compulsion to keep playing. And saying, hey, you can either wait an hour or pay us $1. So I think when you're developing your app, you need to figure out, is this something where I can put that logic and that paywall in at a point where there's good engagement? And if not, then maybe you should beef up the content and basically make it a premium app. So really, you need to identify what you're targeting and how you're going to build the app before you start building and try and throw in app purchasing at the very end.
So the 3 business models that I've come to mind have been premium, freemium, premium within app purchases. So those are the 3 that have become very popular. And when I say freemium, I'm talking to free to play. Because freemium, when you say that, it clearly says that you can get a sneak peek, but in case you want more content, buy the premium. Free to play, you can actually play the whole game without paying, but your experience will not match the level that you would like to have if you're not paying in app purchases. So those are the three models that we've seen. In our case, we have more of premium plus in-app purchases. And there's a reason why. Because for some of our users, this content is available to them on different other platforms for $60, north of $60. They are happily willing to pay $4.99, $16.99 as a price point for this content. It's still not available anywhere else other than the iOS. So they're okay to use that as a content acquisition for themselves. But we absolutely see the power of free-to-play. And we've been moving in that direction. Like just mentioned by Scott, game design is very important for that. Exactly what your design is, what is those loops that you mentioned about. And like he said, Candy Crush has this more lives, send to your friends. That's like a brilliant design. That's a super brilliant design, and they integrated well with Facebook. If that is the kind of game that you're building, and free-to-play is what you're going after, then you have to be good at that. And we recognize that shift that's coming, and we will definitely be looking at how we can get some market share in that space.
One other thing I've noticed is that more and more, as these games become more and more complicated for us to design and more simple for the end users, almost if you're designing a game or an app, we're less in the games business and more in the psychology business. It's what colors will make people buy. Red makes people buy. If you go to Target, there's a reason that the Target logo is white and red, because red makes people buy. There's a bunch of just really silly little psychological tricks that people employ in apps to get you to buy. To close out something, it's almost always in the upper left. When you move forward, it's always in the upper right. So guess where they're going to put the buy button? In the upper right. There's a bunch of little stuff like that. It seems like such a trivial little change, but it makes a huge difference, especially when you're talking, when you have millions of players going through your game. If you make a change that affects half a percentage, your revenue just jumps significantly. And
I have to add to that. The demographic on mobile is very different from any other platforms that were actually adopted for gaming. We as women are kind of leading that space. So obviously, the games are built to cater to the needs of that demographic. And if you are building a fighting game, you put in things like a female fighter, combat star, and that makes a huge lot of difference. Those kind of things are just like adding to the psychographics of the user base who is adopting to this. A core digital gaming, hardcore gamer is not what we have in mind when we're designing a mobile game. They just look different. They look like people in this room. And that's very different from what we've grown up considering what a gamer looks like.
Interesting. So, coming back again to in-app purchases, what specific analytics and what strategies have you used in the past? You could share about identifying the whales, the high value gamers. How's that changed with user analytics?
I'm going to be quiet on that question. Really won't be that.
Oh, I don't do games. Just play them.
When you look at the information you get from games, it's really important to get as much information as you can, because even trivial stuff will make a difference. Some of the key stuff I would look at is session time, how many times are they coming back every day, how long are they playing, are your users hitting a certain point in the game, at which point they all drop off, is that the difficulty is too high, stuff like funnel mechanics, if you're dumping in 1,000 people, how many people are spending money at the bottom, how many people are staying in at the bottom, of those people that are in, how many are spending money, how long are they playing. There's pages and pages of metrics that you can go through. Of course, everybody right now, kind of the big buzzwords are daily active users, which is DAUs, and MAUs, which are monthly active. That gives you an idea of how effective your marketing is doing, as well as kind of what your month-over-month turnover is. So if you have 1,000 people one month, and the next month it drops off to 500, what happened? Why did half the people stop playing? Did they hit a certain point in the game, or did they stop playing, or was it too difficult? Did you not have compelling enough content? Were you not pushing out updates frequently enough? Were you not doing a good job of communicating those updates? There's endless things you can look at, but they're all important, and they all play. If you're losing users, you need to figure out is it too hard? Is it too easy? the more information you can get about your app, the better.
I actually consider that whales are very important because 90% of the game revenue comes from 10% of its users. So obviously you want to know who are these 10% of the people who are paying. One of the factors I like to look at is average revenue per paying user, because it makes me declutter all the people who are not paying in the game. Plus at the same time, I actually think that I've also moved a little bit away in the last few months away from the whales, but looking at the LTV per user. So we have a portfolio of games, how we can make people spend not money in just one single game, but across the portfolio of our games. So that way, I'm actually more keep, if I'm paying a CPI to acquire a user in one specific game, I'm just not limited to having spent in that particular game. How can I move him around to the next game, and keep him in the ecosystem? For me, the story last year was, it was a CPI war. This year, the story is it's an LTV war.
I would agree with that too. So, I mean, even though we don't, games just doesn't fall under my jurisdiction, is that as a content provider and, when we're going out and especially developing apps and mobile sites and things like that, it becomes increasingly important for us to evaluate the LTV, and especially in looking at, the MAUs and the DAUs and average time spent and how many pages per session. And especially video is also a big part of our business, so things like video starts and video completions and things like that are very important to us. What I will say though is that while analytics is a big topic now, there's still a lot of marketplace challenges of trying to standardize reporting and standardize analytics and the reporting suites, and because there isn't a universal tag, one tag that can track every single platform apples to apples, and there isn't Nielsen across everything. I know they're working on it, and we definitely are testing with them and things like that, but when we talk about it and we talk about it to our advertisers and clients and things like that, they want to know how hard our dollars are working when we advertise on mobile versus when we advertise on desktop versus when we advertise on television. So analytics, very important. What I will say that it's challenging to get the analytics that you want and that what everyone is writing about in the trades that you should get when you boil it down to realistically implementing all the different SDKs and tags for third-party tracking and implementation. From a development standpoint, we have to be very aware of that going into production or when you're putting together your timeline and things like that. But I know that just from my personal experience that it's something that was talked about and was kind of important for a while, and we're starting to make sure that we have all the right types of tracking in place so that we can get those analytics. So the more that we talk about it, and the more that we get, partner, we partner and use Flurry quite a bit, and so, certain partners like that, the more that they can sort of extend that knowledge beyond the developers community, into the advertising community, into the third-party tracking, their peers, and making it widely available to everyone, then I think it'll be a much more streamlined conversation. Right now, I think it's too fragmented, which is what the big challenge is of mobile is anyways.
I have a quick point to make there. If you were to look 4 years ago, and analytics available at that time and the ad sources, the world has actually become more difficult. We would have thought that as we graduate, things would have got simpler. But people like us are scratching our heads because we've been in it for the last 4 years and things are just getting more and more complicated. There are more SDKs, there are more average networks, there's more source attribution you have to do. So my take is that things are not going to get simpler in the future. It's actually going to get more complicated. And that's the kind of environment we are living in. Just to give you a little bit of what our lives look like. We are actually children of the chaos, and we continue to live in that chaos. But one thing is for sure, the way I look at mobile, for me specifically, it will become the pre-order for video game. So mobile will be the next pre-order for your games. And that's how I perceive the future to be. Whether it will span out like that or not, we have to see.
So, going into that, so what you said is that mobile will be the pre-order, so are you actually, is that now part of your game development cycle, that you actually have mobile part that segues into a larger...
And how do you pre-order a digital product? Are you going to run out of supply?
So, here's the thing. I just think that what I've meant was that you will be able to increase the LTV based on the fact that you will launch a game on mobile in a way that will actually help you increase sales of your digital products.
Like we're in Kickstarter. Kickstarter, basically the idea is you're guaranteed sales before product is made. So you're saying this is the same concept.
It's actually been done by some of the people in the space and they've done very well. The idea is that, you know, the user needs to be engaged in a game based on the context of the device he's engaging with. If you have to pick a character, you could pick it on mobile, on your way to mobile. But if you have to do a combat, you really want to be in front of your Xbox because you need 1 hour to do that. And you know, there's some trading that might be facilitated through an iPad. So you're looking at that ecosystem. So you're going to make a game that actually will speak to where the user and what context he's using the device, and it will be the next generation of the connected user that we talk about.
One question I had was about analytics. So we talk about analytics and then tweaking the game and optimizing for monetization. But there comes a point when you either optimize for monetization or you can optimize for game. I mean, have you come across these situations where you have a game that's very, very good at making money, but then it adversely impacts the quality of the game?
Good at making money, I don't have a problem with that. Not at all. I'll keep spending money to optimize that game. But you make a valid point. The real concern, if it's making money, that's great. I mean, that's the name of the game. Then you can increase the LTV. Otherwise, in mobile, the LTV shifts. When you think of an LTV, is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is it 9 months? The way I attribute LTV to any mobile game is it making money today, 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later? Because you could launch a game and it could be a complete failure and you have to pull it out in 2 weeks because there is no way you're going anywhere with that game. And people have done that in the space. You'll see examples if you read up on mobile. And then there are games like Visual Blitz that have been in the space for 5 years, still monetizing amazingly. So to the point of what I'm trying to make is that you keep optimizing what is working for you and keep dropping what's not working.
And I would say also just and I think about sports and our CBS sports portfolio, that it's very seasonal. And so when you're looking to measure LTV, which we do also, is that we have to take into consideration the seasonality of our different games. And so when you have an app like CBS Sports, which is an evergreen app that is year-round, and you've got NBA, NFL, college football, fantasy football, etc., certain areas or certain arenas that we call in the different apps are going to go up and go down. And then there are certain products like fantasy football where we as a company make a decision that we're going to put out a fantasy football app that is going to have very high LTV during the months of September and through December. But then January through the rest of the year, when fantasy football is not in season, what are we going to do? And so we'll make decisions based on, do we fold in other fantasy sports into that app to make it more year-round, or do we know that usage is going to go down, and then we are going to have to ramp up our audience acquisition strategy, in the preseason leading up to the draft and things like that, to the start of the regular season. So, again, picking and choosing who your target audience is and what vertical or what category you want to be in is, I think that that's a decision that you guys have to make, that you don't for us to make. For CBS, people expect a lot from us, and so obviously it's kind of a harder decision for us to make in terms of we don't go out and build 10 apps, or we don't go out and do, we really look at the data that we have and say, okay, users are doing this, and so we're going to spend more time developing game trackers because we know people are using game trackers, and so how can we make it better? How can we make it more native to iOS? How can we make it more native to Android? So those are the types of things. We take a lot of cues from Apple and from Google directly about the user interface and there's a word that they like to use, how playful it is and how it looks on the screen, and aesthetically, how does it look on the iOS platform versus the Android platform. So a lot of those aesthetic qualities really is something that we also pay a lot of attention to in differentiating the products on the different platforms.
I just want to make sure does everybody in the room know that what LTV is? LTV is lifetime value. So it's basically what is each customer worth over the span of the time that they spend in your app.
Thanks, Scott. So we're open the floor up to questions. And I think there is a mic going around somewhere.
So Deepika was talking about free models, freemium, whatever. So there's kind of another model in there for freemium. And I don't work for Kickside. I'm not affiliated with it. There's a company called Kickside that makes really great games, and their games are completely free, but yet they're so well done that they're making a lot of money off them. So I think maybe there's another variant that you should include for a super high quality game that is done in Flash and gives you like a desktop experience. Now it's not on mobile, it's on the web. But you can play that game and have the same experience as someone who's paying. When you pay, you just accelerate your progress. And that's a model that Kickside has done extremely well at, and they're just really a great game company. So I just thought that people should be aware of that, because I think it's another alternative.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, of course, I'm aware of that company, and they've done a great job with their. One thing about their audience is very remarkable. It's a small group of audience from any casual game, but they monetize on a higher ARPU than most of the games. So with even this small segment, they know their target audience so well that they give them what they want and they monetize their content. Yes, hardcore gamers.
Yeah, if you look at the mid-core and the hardcore, so like the guys like the Capcom and the Clash of Clans, compared to like a Candy Crush, their audience is going to be significantly smaller, but their average revenue per user is significantly higher.
My name is Brian Clark. I've built games before, but I was kind of wondering, do you have like an idea from? So you said the 3 models, premium, paid, whatever. Do you have like a strategy where you start maybe as a completely free, moving to a premium, or maybe premium switch it to like different parts of paid? You have a strategy about how you move your applications around? You go try things that doesn't work and completely shift.
Obviously, we have a strategy, and there's a big discussion on pricing of the app. I'm sure everybody here been in those conversations. The strategy is always game specific. So whatever the game is, what you're looking to achieve out of it, and if the game design does not have any compulsion loops or any viral components to it, then it's got a different monetization scheme than versus it's got all those components. So to answer that question on a broad scale, yes, there's always a strategy. There's just no generic strategy. You always have to go specifically for the game that you're talking about.